Hi, I'm USBC Director of Coaching, Stephen Padilla. I'm here today with USBC Gold Coach and PBA Champion, Mike Diaz, and we're here today at Arapahoe Bowling Center in Greenwood Village, Colorado. We're going to give you a great insight into a couple of pieces that Coach Mike's really built into his coaching program. We're going to talk self-evaluation, right? We're also going to talk about some lane play options. You've had a great experience and a great career on the lanes, and we're going to talk briefly about some of the things you do specifically for the left-hand side of the lane, right?
Exactly. We're going to engineer a specific tip for left-handers, and we're going to show what happens when things get ugly on the lane on the left side, what they're going to do to fix that.
Excellent. So let's take a look at what we've got from Coach Mike. We're going to have some great information, and hopefully we can take this information to your game and increase your scores on the lanes. Okay, so I'm here with Coach Mike Diaz. Mike, we're going to talk briefly about a great system. You're trying to learn about your players. You need a program to help you understand what they're capable of. You've developed a bowler assessment system, and your bowler assessment gives you start to finish who they are, what they're capable of, and then how you're going to address them down the road. Let's learn about your specific bowler assessment system and understand exactly what it goes through, and then we're going to use it in an example on some students. So in your bowler assessment though, the first thing you're looking for is your bowler profile. What do you want to know about your bowler when you start?
Well, for a bowler profile, we want to know the basic variables. We want to know what the bowler's axis point is, what their release ball speed is, their rev rate, and their tilt. And from that, we can find some characteristics about their game from some information that we came up with at USBC related to release ratio.
Absolutely. There's plenty of different pieces of the profile that are going to help you assess initially who that bowler is. Now, the second piece of your bowler assessment also has to do with the player, but it has to do with a little bit more what they do on the lanes. It has to do with accuracy. What are you looking for in the accuracy piece?
Well, in accuracy, we're looking at two things. We're looking at how good is their spare shooting, their base spare shooting, and for this spreadsheet, it's geared toward anybody being able to do it at any point without any special tools. So we've focused on three different spares. We focused on 10 pins and 7 pins. For right-handers, we're looking at the 3-6-10 as the third spare they're going to shoot. For advanced bowlers, we're going to have them shoot 30 of those, and for beginning bowlers, we're going to have them shoot 20 of them to get an idea of how many they make. The other component of that is accuracy, general accuracy. Do you hit what you intend to hit? So we're going to have a bowler roll 20 shots, and we're going to find out how accurate they are.
So this is two pieces already of a great tool that you as a coach, or anybody really that's interested in learning about themselves as a bowler or from a coaching aspect, will get a chance to actually assess and use. I'm going to give you a great example of how it works. Now, the third piece, equally as important as anything else, everybody's got the ability to have some accuracy, and they've got who they are as makeup, but now the versatility of that player, the ability to change parts of what they do and how they attack the lanes are really going to make an effect. Tell us what you're looking for with your versatility piece.
Well, for advanced bowlers, what we're going to do is we're going to look at their versatility in terms of ball speed. We're going to look at their versatility in terms of axis rotation. Those are the two easiest things for bowlers to vary to match up to lane conditions. And then finally, we're going to look at, can they control their loft? And we're going to look at loft in 3 ranges, 0 to 2 feet, 2 feet to 5 feet, and 5 feet to 8 feet, to see if they can control their loft.
Wow, so we're going to get a great picture of exactly what our bowlers are capable of, who they are, what they can do on the lanes, and then a range of what they're capable of in their physical game on the approaches. This is going to give us kind of A to B exactly who a player is and exactly what we would want to work on if we want to improve their game. So let's take a look at this in action. Let's take the bowler assessment, let's put it to a couple of players, and let's see how it comes out and what we can do to make a player better.
All right, sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, Mike, we're going to take a look at your bowler assessment in a specific area, the bowler profile, which is your first piece. This is information that you can collect on your player. A bowler could collect this themselves, but you as a coach want to know a lot about specifically what your player has to offer whenever they show up. Your first point's axis point whenever you're looking at a player. What specifically about the axis point are you collecting, and what's it going to show us?
Well, for the more advanced bowlers, certainly axis point is going to be really important for them with their pro shot person in terms of how they're going to lay the ball out. You know, do they have a high track? Do they have a low track? Do they spin it a little more? Do they roll it a lot more off their hands? It's really going to give you that profile of what do they basically look like as a bowler.
Yeah, it's really their hand release at the bottom of the swing. You're addressing a point specifically off their release that shows you where the ball rotates around an axis. So the axis point's a real key point to understand just what they're giving the ball when they let go of it. The next piece on your bowler profile is ball speed. What are you looking for there?
I just want to know what the release speed is off their hands so that we know, do they throw it hard as their baseball speed? Do they throw it soft as their baseball speed? And that's really going to give you an idea of, can we go up and down from there? Do we have some range? Do we have some versatility? And the speed really gives me the next variable in terms of their bowler personality as we build up this profile of who they are as a bowler.
Excellent. When you're measuring the speed for a player, you're measuring in the front part of the lane off as they let go of it, or you're looking down the lane? Where on the lane are you going to check that?
Exactly, Stephen. We're looking at their release ball speed.
Okay, so you want the initial ball speed, you want to know exactly what they're doing so that you can start to measure that and then maybe measure where they're versatile in that.
Right, and if you don't have an easy way to do it as a bowler, a couple ways to do it is to use a stopwatch, get the time. There are tables available online where you can convert that to average ball speed.
Right.
And once you know that, you can calibrate that against the monitors that you see, because as we know, the monitors are at 50 feet down the lane, and that point down the lane, the ball's lost 2 to 2.5 miles an hour of ball speed already.
Yeah, the lane's already taken effect, the lane pattern's already in place, so that's away from what the bowler actually does. Now your next piece is rev rate. The rev rate, a lot of players like to talk about this, a lot of bowlers and or coaches are really interested in what's my rev rate, how many RPMs do I get on the ball? You're calculating that off of a video shot, and what are you trying to measure, what are you trying to look at when you see rev rate?
I want to get rev rate to know, are they a high rev player, are they a low rev player? That fits into the personality, and ultimately the pieces of information that we've just discussed, including their rev rate, are going to tell us who they are as a bowler. How fast does that ball spin off their hand? And that's ultimately what all this information is going to tell us.
So that's basically everything we've talked about is kind of centered around their release and kind of how they get to the line. Your next piece now is axis tilt, and axis tilt's going to be another factor of the actual hand release. What are you trying to get out of that?
Right, because we know high tilt players tend to get the ball a lot further down the lane just naturally than low tilt players. So that's the final piece of our equation to really get that magic number of release ratio.
Right, release ratio is going to give us an example of how fast the ball's traveling down the lane versus how much it's spinning off their hand. We'll talk about that in detail as we move along. We're going to put some players through this assessment. So once we get all that data collected and once we start collecting the pieces and understanding what our players are capable of, we're going to learn what their ratio is, which, like you mentioned earlier, is going to help us with exactly what kind of equipment they should have, how it should fit their hand, if it needs to have an adjustment to it, how it's going to fit the lane and or the environment. There's plenty of pieces that this information is going to start with and take us into your next profile pieces, which are going to be accuracy and versatility. So let's take a look at some players, let's assess what they've got as far as the actual bowler profile, and then we'll see what that takes us as far as making them better players.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, Mike, the second piece of your bowler assessment has to deal with accuracy. And we're going to collect some data on the players. Let's talk about what we want to see on the accuracy information collection. The first piece for you want to know the lane condition. What are you basically filling in when you're identifying lane condition?
So for lane condition, it's are they doing this evaluation on a house shot, or are they doing it on a sport shot? They may do this evaluation on a house shot and get somewhat different numbers from when they bowl on a sport shot. And so it's good for them to understand that based on the lane condition, their numbers might vary a little bit.
Absolutely. We would expect the lane environment to actually dictate a little bit more of how a player would perform. Exactly. So we're assessing that in this piece of your bowler assessment. The next piece is going to be spares. What spares are you going to have them shoot, and what are we going to get out of it?
Well, for people just doing this on their own, Stephen, it's really easy to pick out 3 spares that a lot of people shoot at a lot. And those are the 7-pin, obviously, the 10-pin. For right-handers, this would be the 3-6-10 spare. Tends to be a tougher spare for right-handers, and it's a cluster spare. It's a multiple pin spare that gives them some look at their accuracy, not just at shooting a single pin, but can they put the ball where they want to when they're shooting a cluster of spares. For left-handers, this would be the 2-4-7. For our more advanced players, we're going to look at having them shoot 30 shots. For our beginner intermediate players, we're going to have them roll 20 shots at each spare. Okay. So it's going to give us a good percentage of, are they making a high percentage of their 7 pins, 10 pins, and for right-handers, 3-6-10s.
Excellent. So those 3 spare combinations are going to give you just a foundation to work with. Everything's kind of built inside of that when it comes to the actual spare shooting of the rest of the game. So those are great starting points. Now your next piece in accuracy, you're going to take, for those series of shots, you're going to track that information, and we're really going to assess their accuracy overall at corners, obviously, and then at multiple pin spares. But once we collect that data and perhaps we find any weaknesses over the course of that shot, are we going to suggest specific training for that?
Yes, we're gonna look at maybe there's something as simple as the way at which they go about shooting a 10-pin needs a little bit of refinement based on where they stand, where they target, are their shoulders lined up to their target. A lot of simple things that we can fix, and as we know, every single pin spare is 11 pins on your score.
Yeah, it's going to increase the score a lot. Accuracy is a big deal when it comes to our sport especially, and everybody gets it done a little bit differently. So we're going to assess that through multiple levels of players, and once we get this data, we get it all crunched in together, we're going to get some good information out of that. You've got your spreadsheet, and your system particularly has got some data it's going to give you after the fact. The biggest pieces it's going to tell us are...
We would expect for a lower average bowler, their spare percentages are going to be lower. Okay. For a higher average bowler, their spare percentages are going to be higher.
Right.
These are numbers that they can track and not only do the assessment once, they can do it multiple times over time to see how they've improved. And for bowlers on the accuracy part, not only can we see how many boards do they cover at the arrows, how many boards do they cover at the break point, but we'll look at individual frames and look at their accuracy. It'll tell us a little bit about direction off their hand.
So great information as far as collecting it for accuracy. The players that are going to go through this system, like you said, can collect it themselves. As a coach, we get a chance to actually gather data. Hopefully we're using that as we move through their process of getting better. As a player, if it's something you're just in a practice session, you're able to go out there and use, it would become valuable and easy to do. It may be practice sessions where you're not hitting the pocket every time, you're just focusing on my accuracy, which is those corner pin spares or those multiple pins. Okay, Mike, the third piece of your bowler assessment has to do with overall versatility. This is really, I think, more for intermediate to high level players when they're bowling in multiple environments, but the data we're going to collect here is really important to help assess what they bring to the table. Your first piece is ball speed. What are we looking for?
Okay, so we've already measured their baseline ball speed, and here we want to see how fast can they roll the ball effectively in competition, not just how hard can they throw it.
Right.
What would they actually use in competition? So the maximum ball speed that they could comfortably use in competition.
Yeah, it's important, especially when it comes to any environment, league night, tournament night, it doesn't matter. Just being able to keep your range controllable and manageable keeps it efficient and effective when it comes to play.
Right, because so often the difference between leaving a corner pin and striking might be as simple as making a small change in ball speed.
Absolutely. So we're going to measure that. The next piece is axis rotation. And axis rotation is going to do with the hand position at the bottom of the swing, right?
Exactly. And so how far can the bowler really get their hand around to the outside of the ball and maximize their axis rotation? Create that stronger back end motion for when they're playing deeper on the lanes.
Sure, lanes transition all the time. And as the oil breaks down on the lane, right-handed players specifically have to chase the patterns typically more than left-handers, but overall there has to be some kind of adjustment, alignment with your footwork or your targeting, and part of that adjustment doesn't just have to be finding the right part of the lane, but now changing my hand position and adjusting my axis rotation to help adapt to the new ball motion that's needed for that part of the lane.
Exactly, because if I'm a right-hander playing the fourth or fifth arrow, I've got to create some of that angle for myself back to the pocket, and I may have to use a little bit more axis rotation to effectively do that.
So we'll not only look at measuring it for the players, but this will help, I think, both players and coaches learn what it does to ball motion, and then also how that can be applied to multiple types of lane conditions.
Exactly.
So it'd be great information. Now, the third piece for this bowler assessment in the last section of versatility here is going to be loft. What are we going to look for there?
So can the bowler control their loft? Can they set it down early on the lane when they need to? Can they get an intermediate amount of loft when they want to? And can they really get the ball out on the lane when they have to? There are times when lanes change in such a way that you need to get the ball over the first 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 feet of the lane to effectively combat the lane condition that you're faced with.
Yeah, it's a great tool. If a player's physically able to do that, they may be able to use the same piece of equipment, which they're comfortable with already, and just change where it changes its motion down lane based off a loft. So we'll look at what our players are capable of there, maybe even make some suggestions on how to train a player to loft at different speeds.
Exactly, because if you're you're lacking in these 3 areas, it's a real good indicator that maybe that's an area that you need to spend a little bit more focus time on as a player and get some practice time
Some
on.
great practice drills and tools when it comes to that. So let's see how the numbers come out and overall take an assessment and see how our players can not only get better, but what we could possibly do to help get them better during the next couple practice sessions.
Sounds good, Stephen. All right, so we finished the bowler assessment part for our beginner intermediate student, Aggie. And Aggie, what did you think?
It was good. It was good.
Did you learn a little bit about your spare shooting?
I did. I did.
So we shot our 7s and our 10s and our 3/6 and made 50% of them.
Yes.
So
Better.
did you learn a little bit about yourself in terms of spare shooting during that process?
I did. I did. I learned that I have to actually turn my body and walk towards the target more.
Okay.
And I wasn't doing that before.
Okay.
So
What about the part where you're trying to hit your target? What did you learn about that? We found out that your overall accuracy, and for Aggie, we just did this at her target at the arrows. So your accuracy was 4.5 boards. So
Yeah.
that showed you sometimes you missed a little right of target, sometimes a little bit left of target.
I think it's like my approach when I'm missing my target. Yeah. So.
And can you tie that to what we worked on a little bit, what we worked on the other day in terms of your trail leg and getting that trail leg out of the way to be a little more accurate?
Yes. I I try to do that as much as I can.
Yeah.
But once my approach is like off, everything else is off too.
Yeah.
So that's why I can't get my target.
So now we've tied the notion of accuracy, both in spare shooting and just hitting her target at the arrows, to what she needs to work on as a bowler. So Aggie, thank you for participating and being a part of this.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so we've completed John's assessment. And John's a 200, 215 average bowler. And so for this part of the bowler's assessment, we're looking at spare shooting and accuracy at the arrows and at the break point. And so John, we see that you made 70% of your 7s, 67% of your 10s, and 80% of your 3/6 So what did you learn from the spare shooting part of it?
You got to stay focused. No matter how many times, even if you're just practicing, even if you're repeating, if you don't stay focused while shooting at your spares in practice, it's going to affect you on your league scores and in tournaments.
Exactly, because we really do play the way we practice. And if you stay focused on the shot in front of you, then that shot is going to work, because you just don't miss as much when your focus is merely on the shot right in front of you. And so many times bowlers on a key shot will lose their focus for that spare shot. They'll miss a couple spares and they'll miss the cut in a tournament. So what did you see when it comes down to accuracy at the arrows and at the break point?
So accuracy at the arrows and the break point, it's easy on a house shot to get lax on your shot, because ball reaction is very forgiving on a house shot versus a sports shot.
Yeah, and we saw that because some of your misses still struck.
Exactly. You don't really notice as much when you miss a shot because it strikes. If you're not as focused as you were, like on a sports shot, you have no forgiveness. You miss one board, a half board off on a sports shot, and your shot's going to go errant.
Right. And so we saw your accuracy at the arrows was 3.2 boards, and your accuracy at the break point was 3.8. So that bottom number being a little bit bigger says that there are some direction mistakes.
Right.
So when you see a shot where you're intending to hit 12 and then you're intending to hit 8 at the arrows, now if it's 13 and 9 or if it's 11 and 7, those mistakes are parallel to your target and they're not going to hurt you as much. But if we have a shot that's, say, 15 and 10 at the arrows, we know that you missed in on direction a little bit.
Correct.
And so those are places where you can work on your game in terms of being a little more patient with the shot, not quite grabbing it as much, and things that'll help you out.
Right.
And so that's how you want to use this evaluation form, is to really look at, are you making mistakes that are parallel? Are you making mistakes that are direction mistakes? And that'll guide you towards improving as an upper level player to get yourself ready to bowl on those sport conditions.
Okay, Mike, based on the bowler assessment, we've now got some information on John's game. Let's take a quick look at what your page looks like and see what we gathered based off of what he was able to deliver. I think the first piece is going to be speed, right?
Yeah, and so for speed, we had already measured his baseline ball speed, and then we had him throw some baseline ball speed shots, and then looked at the monitor to see what ball speed came up on the monitor. So we knew his baseline speed was 17.5 miles an hour, but on the monitor it showed up 15.4 on average. There's going to be some variability.
Yeah, so the monitor is a good tool to help kind of gauge a little bit of what we see, but it's not the exact speed. It's actually measuring down the lane, right?
Right, because at 50 feet down the lane, the ball's lost anywhere from 2 to 2.5 miles an hour, depending on the player, depending on the lane condition.
Right.
And so we just take the difference of those two numbers, and we can use that lane monitor itself to measure his max ball speed and his min ball speed.
Right, so we're getting a range is what we're getting, which is going to give us some versatility. And we want the range to be nothing specific, but we want it for where he's most competitive, right? We don't want just a range of fast and slow that he can't use. We want what he can use.
Yeah, and actually we want the fastest he could use in competition and the slowest he could use in competition. And even with that backdrop, we found John probably went a little bit outside of what he really would use in competition. So what did we find?
Based off of your assessment, you saw that we had around 4 miles an hour, maybe somewhere in that range was about where his slowest and his fastest, where he was comfortable competing. Is that what you see on average for that caliber of player, or do you see a wider or smaller range?
That's actually a pretty wide range. I mean, if you can go up 2 miles an hour and go down 2 miles an hour in your ball speed, that's a fantastic range to be able to repeat. And the key is, what can you actually repeat in competition?
Right. It doesn't do us any good if we can throw it fast and slow and we're not using it. So definitely use what range-wise we're in. So the next piece on your assessment for what we got for John was from his axis rotation, and we measured that with the video camera. We got behind him on some shots for his delivery. We asked him to just throw it normal, correct?
Yes.
And what did we see?
And we saw his base axis rotation was 50 degrees.
Okay.
Pretty typical. We found on the high end, he was only able to get to about 60 degrees. So he's limited on his high-end variability. There's just some limitations in his game in terms of his release and how he gets around it. And on the low end, he was pretty good. He was about 30 degrees.
So we're talking about how much he can move his hand to the side of the ball. That's increasing his axis rotation. That's going to give him that smaller range we talked about from his normal. And then the lower range was actually getting his hand behind the ball more. It actually changes the shape of the ball motion on the lane and gives him a range of versatility that when the lanes change, he can use some hand position to try and compensate.
Exactly, and that's the one he's more comfortable with, and that's the one he can go to. And part of it out of this process is figuring out, okay, what's my first adjustment that I'm comfortable going to, and my second and my third, and that's going to be different for every player.
Yeah, hand release may be one of those things further down the list. If you're going to move your feet, you're going to change your bowling ball, change parts of the lane, obviously. And then as you start to dial in the pocket, get comfortable, and you're just trying to adjust some pin carry, that's where I see most players with just hand releases changing, trying to get pin carry differences. Okay, so moving down the list on the assessment sheet here, the last thing I think we captured was the player's loft ability, right?
Right, and we set up 3 boxes, if you will, from the foul line to 2 feet down the lane, from 2 feet to 5 feet down the lane, and finally from 5 feet to 8 feet, which in most bowling centers is going to be the dots.
Right. So inside those 3 windows, you're trying to get him just to be successful repeating deliveries in those boxes, right?
Right, and it's really a feel thing for most players to feel what getting the ball down into a certain amount of loft really feels like, because typically most players either loft it quite a bit more or quite a bit less than they actually realize.
So you can actually gauge off your assessment whether or not he's more successful laying it down earlier, which may be helpful for heavier volumes of oil or longer oil patterns, or whether he's able to loft it further on the lane. If the lane does start to transition and the breakdown causes him to need to get the ball further, then on either side of those ranges, what was John better at?
And in John's case, he was really better at the 5 to 8 foot range for his loft. He's comfortable getting a little bit more loft on the ball. When we asked him to go into the first 2 boxes, he actually struggled a little bit. It had more shots where he missed the box a little bit. And in fact, we saw this 5 to 8 foot range, he was 10 for 10.
Excellent. So it fit definitely, I think, his rev rate. As strong as he is, as much as he can break down a lane pattern, it would make sense that that type of player probably will be better at lofting it more than laying it down sooner. So
Exactly, because they just do it more.
yeah, overall our versatility, your bowler assessment sheet here gave some real good categories for John, and then we were able to see where his ranges are, and based off of that, what would we work with him on to try and improve based off of this assessment?
I think based on what we saw in the assessment, there's some things in his game in terms of being able to weight on the ball so that he's able to get around the ball more when he needs to, and just that general ability to lay the ball down a little bit more when he needs to, because going from just being a scratch player to starting to bowl a lot more tournaments, he's going to need that extra range of versatility to be more successful.
Excellent. So some quick areas, not just off of your assessment, but just in general for his game that we're able to monitor and maintain, and then some prescriptions when he goes out to his next practice sessions to really work on making him a stronger player. It's not always about just hitting your target more or throwing the ball faster or slower. A lot of times you're working on opening up your ranges so that you become a more well-rounded player. That may make you better at tournaments and competitions.
Yeah, and when I practice as a player, I like to think about expanding my practices to the outer ranges of what I'm capable of doing, and then the stuff in the middle gets a lot easier.
Exactly. So there it is. Assessments are easy to do. The information that Mike was able to gather here and use for John's assessment is possibly something you can take to your next couple of practice sessions and open your range. So good work. Thanks for the information, and hopefully some of the players out there can use the same set of tools and maybe make their games better.
Yep. You never know where you're going until you measure where you are.
Hi, I'm USBC Director of Coaching Stephen Padilla. I'm here today with Mike Diaz, USBC Gold Coach and PBA Champion, and we're here today in Greenwood Village, Colorado at Arapahoe Bowling Center, and we're going to give you a great insight as to some of the tips that Coach Mike uses in a lot of his lessons whenever he gets out on the floor to work with people. Mike, you've got a lot of great experience. We've got a lot of good information from your experience on the lanes as a bowler and for your experience with people off the lanes. What are we going to see today?
We're going to see a mixture of some of my favorite tips, using some tools, using some drills, and just showing people how to really improve their game in drills they can do on the lanes, off the lanes, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Excellent. So let's take a look at what we're going to do on the lanes. Let's go out there and make it happen and see what we can do to improve some player scores.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, Coach, you've got some great tips across the board when it comes to physical game, obviously the mental game, every part of the sport. One area for high-level players that really they need to focus on sometimes is their release. And it's real important in today's game when it comes to changing either lanes or as the lane changes. You're going to give us an example of a drill here that's going to help somebody with their release, right?
Yeah, so we've got a player, this is really one of my favorite drills. We've got this ball with a couple of finger holes in it, and teaching people to really get that good weight transfer from the palm of their hand all the way out to their fingertips before they release it makes a huge difference in their rev rate.
Now, talking about release, I think it's important here to note that you got to make sure the player's got good balance, good foundation, really good overall finish position first before you really start to change the release and do something different with it, right?
Right, because as we know, release is really a byproduct of everything else that happens in their swing. So if their fundamentals aren't pretty solid, you can help them understand what a stronger release looks like, but until they improve their fundamentals, it's going to be limited.
So let's take a look at what the release looks like, go through the drill, and then we'll see how it works.
Okay. Okay, so with Jamar here, we see that he's a little bit limited with his rev rate. He's having a little bit of trouble really generating a lot of roll off of his hand. Ball goes pretty straight, misses to the right, just because the ball doesn't have enough roll to read the lane and roll up. Okay, so in this first step of the drill with the Eileen's Bowling Buddy field trainer, we're gonna have Jamar toss it back and forth. We're gonna toss it to each other. We're trying to hit each other about belt high with this drill. And then the first part is just getting the toss feel back and forth. Now in the second part of this drill, we're going to have Jamar step into the swing as if he's creating a downswing and a release. This gives him a little bit more feel, and he's going to start to feel the weight go towards his fingertips a little bit. third part of this drill is now we really want to emphasize maintaining the weight of the ball in his palm all the way to the release, and then getting the weight to transfer all the way out to his fingertips and start to collapse the wrist back towards straight as he's releasing the ball, so he can feel it all off of his fingertips through the release point. Now the last step of this drill is to really keep the hand in as long as possible, so it almost feels like the fingertips are going from the bottom left on the ball to the top right on the ball. And it's a collapse of the wrist, the release. It's the release of the thumb, the collapse of the wrist, and the fingers going from the bottom left of the ball to the top right. Okay, so now we see an after shot of Jamar's release and his full approach, and we can see a big difference in his release. He's waiting a lot longer. The weight of the ball stays in the palm. It transfers effectively out to his fingertips, and the effect of that is a lot more roll on the ball. You can see the ball read the lane a lot more and transition back up towards the pocket.
Okay, Mike, so we've just seen a drill using the Rev Trainer, a great tool for helping somebody with a change in their rev rate. What did we see in Jamar's game?
Well, in Jamar's game, we saw at first that his rev rate was a little bit limited. He wasn't getting the weight transfer all the way from the palm of his hand out to his fingertips. Ball wasn't able to read the lane quite as well, and it limited his options.
So now with this training tip and this tool, possibly when he gets on the approaches or off the approaches, he can actually feel the transfer of that weight from his palm to his fingers. He can actually start to change how he releases the ball and ultimately change the way the ball reads the lane, right?
Exactly, because you get a little bit stronger rev rate, and all of a sudden you can do things with a bowling ball that you couldn't do with a weaker release.
Yeah, it's a fine-tune adjustment when it comes to the overall game when we're talking about hand release, but it really makes a difference on the scoreboard in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Coach Mike, we're going to take a look at something that's really important with anybody's physical game. It's going to be the ball start when they get into the approach, the push away specifically, right?
Exactly, because if you don't get the start of the swing going, you really can't get into a good flow and a good rhythm and make a good shot.
Absolutely. It's a very important part of anybody's game. It's important to know not only what to do, but if you get out of sync for any reason, you got to be able to get right back in line somehow. So we've got a student here. This is Keely, right?
Keely.
She's going to help us a little bit with identifying some of an issue with her push away, and you've got a drill you're going to help her with, right?
Yes, we've got a nice simple drill and a game that you can use to help score yourself and evaluate how you're doing with it.
Okay, so let's take a look at Keely's game. Let's take an idea of what we're going to do with this game and let's see what happens.
Okay. Okay, Keely. First couple things I saw is the tendency to just hold the push away a little bit rather than get it started. Anytime you get something in motion, you want to keep it in motion. So we want to get that push away started and keep it flowing. Now, did you have a question about the push away in terms of what you're feeling?
Sometimes I feel like if I push too early, or not too early, but if I'm pushing early for me, which makes it on time, that sometimes my balance gets thrown off.
Okay, so there's a couple things going on with your push away actually. One of them is just when you get it started, because anytime you start and stop and then start again, you're really starting your whole approach again over, because all your momentum is stopped at that point along with the stopping of the push away. The other thing that's going on is just the tendency to push it out to the right. It's a real common thing to try to push the ball out toward your target. But if we align our shoulders and our hips properly and line them up to the target line we're trying to go to, then all you have to do is just feel like you get that push away going right in front of your shoulder. Okay. And then walk around the ball with a crossover step and everything will take care of itself. So let's do a simple drill that's going to help you get to that point where you feel like the push away just falls into your swing. So we're going to take a series of push aways, and the first one, I want you to just take your first 2 steps, because you're a 5-step bowler, and then just lay the ball into my hands. Okay, that was pretty good, but your tendency still is to hold some of the ball weight back. I want you to let the ball weight all fall into my hands. There you go. Just let it all fall into my hands. There you go. Now just relax. Relax out of her body. Just let it all fall in. Good. Now what I want you to do is do that 6 times on your own, where you let it get to that point where it would just, the next thing that would happen is the ball would just absolutely fall into your swing. And let's see how that looks. Good. Make sure your upper body stays relaxed so you let it fall. There you go. Nice and easy and relaxed, and just let it fall into the swing.
Is there a certain height that it should fall to?
Just a little below waist height. Good. Good. Okay, how many was that?
Wasn't really counting.
Okay, we're going to say that was 6. Okay, now what you're going to do is take your time, dry your hand off, and then we're going to have you roll 2 full approaches. Okay. Okay, so that was the first round. And ideally, we would do this up to 10 times, doing the 6 approaches, just doing the first 2 steps, and then doing 2 full approaches. And in fact, we have a scoring system for it. So in the scoring system, you would score yourself a point for each time you feel like you do the drill properly, just doing the first 2 steps, and then score yourself 2 points for each of the 2 times that you take a full approach and it works good. So in that scoring system, 10 would be a perfect score for the round. In that way, you can evaluate on your own when you're practicing when this works well, when you get that good feel for getting the push away moving, and when you don't. And you can track your progress. So we're going to do one more round of this. Go ahead and take the 6 approaches, the 6 drills with the 2-step, and then we'll do 2 full approaches. Remember, it's going to be at the point where it just falls into the swing. Okay, now at this point, it's also really important to set the ball down, dry your hand off, loosen up your body, because doing this type of drill repetitively will tend to tighten up your body just a little bit. So now go ahead when you're ready for the 2 full shots. Okay, so how'd those last 2 shots feel?
I guess the first one to me felt like it was a little slow and maybe a little too far down. The second shot felt really smooth and nice.
Right, the second shot, you're starting to find that rhythm of what works for you individually, your individual physiology and what works for you. And what works for you isn't going to be the same as what works for everybody else. And so it's just a matter of finding that rhythm that's going to work for you to get the ball into the swing nice and clean, nice and smooth and continuous and in front of your shoulder. And it'll take a little bit of time to get used to it.
Yeah.
So you just have to repeat the drill, go through the drill, repeat the drill, and over time, that push away is going to clean right up.
I like the scoring system because it gives you something to aim for, so you're not just sort of out there.
Yeah, and it makes practices, it makes practices more fun.
Yeah.
So it'll be a good way to measure it.
Okay, Mike, so we've gone through quite a drill here, getting just the push away changed for Keely's game. I saw quite a few things when you were working with her that I think are really going to benefit her right away. How did she perceive the lesson overall?
I think she did really well. It takes a little bit of time when you're used to holding onto the push away and stopping that momentum and restarting it to really get to that feel where it's a continuous motion from the push away right into the downswing.
Right. just watching from what you guys were doing, it was pretty obvious to me that whenever she was holding onto the swing and not getting into it so loosely like you're talking about, I think her footwork was a little bit slower and her arm swing was a little bit stronger at the bottom of the swing, meaning she was pulling down on it. I think whenever you gave her those drill steps, it actually worked pretty well in loosening up her arm swing getting into the swing, and her footwork I think got faster. With her faster footwork, I think she also had a faster ball speed in the finish position.
Exactly, because if you don't create the motion to be a continuous flow from start to finish, you're going to have these hesitations and it's going to slow down, and ultimately you're not going to be as good at repeating shots.
Absolutely. Accuracy is going to be a big deal, and this simple drill like you're talking about can be something easy to clean up somebody's accuracy. So thanks again for your work with Keely. Appreciate that, and this will be a great tip that anybody can use in their own game at home.
Absolutely, and by using the scoring part of the drill, it makes it more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, it's one of the biggest parts of the game. If we talk about just start to finish, one of the things that we want to look at for every player is their arm swing, right?
Right, because if you really start to grab the ball and it's not a smooth arm swing, and the ball's not really, if you think about it, an extension of your arm swing, you're not going to repeat shots. You're going to grab one, you're going to pull it, and a lot of bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, so it's very important, not only with accuracy on the lanes, but also repeatability for any player. Our game's about repeating the same shots, being accurate, keeping up with lane play. So the arm swing and keeping that in the same path, keeping it with the same momentum and the same amount of, like you mentioned, gravity is really going to make a difference. Let's take a look at an example of a drill that you've got to work on with a player and see what we can do to help improve or increase their ability with their arm swing.
Okay. So we see in this before shot that John really grabs the ball a lot. He really pulls on the ball on his downswing, and this causes his posture to change, his shoulders start to get forward, and it really causes a lot of errant shots in the swing. So now we're going to see a trainer tool to help with that. So in this demonstration, we're just having John use this tool called the Power Trainer for 5 minutes. He's taking full approaches just as he would with a bowling ball, just not letting go of the tool. And the more he does this, the more he starts to feel the tool become an extension of his arm. As we go along, we see the tool not flop when he comes down through the top of the swing going down, and it gets smoother and smoother by the time we're done using this tool. Okay, so now after using the tool for 5 minutes, we really see that his arm swing is smoothed out quite a bit. Gravity is feeding it down. There's a lot less grab in the swing, and the results are better, more repeatable shots.
Okay, so Mike, so we saw the example with John with the Power Trainer here. It's given a good example of how he trains with the tool, what it does to his arm swing, and the biggest difference we saw was the difference in how much he controlled the swing versus how much he learned to let the swing control his arm.
That's exactly right, and the simpler you can make a drill for a player, the better your results are going to be. And in this case, the drill amounted to having him use a tool for 5 minutes to help him improve his arm swing.
So in this case, the Power Trainer is an option for swing momentum and overall force when a player's playing. Easy to use on or off the lanes, and it's something you don't even have to have in the bowling center, right?
Don't have to be in the bowling center. You could be doing this at home where you got a wood floor and you can slide. Anywhere you can do it, you can use it.
Excellent. So take the tips from Coach Mike. The Power Trainer is a great tool when it comes to manipulating the arm swing and controlling the amount of muscle that goes into it. Perhaps it's something you can use at your home and increase your scores. Okay, Coach Mike, we're going to take a look at a part of the game now that not everybody really focuses on. It's during the approach. It has to do with the pivot step, that step right before the slide. Right. You've got a drill. You've kind of got a hybrid version that you've worked on that fits some of the players you've worked with of a three-step drill to do that. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see.
Well, it's kind of a hybrid between Hank Boomershine's walk the line drill and Del Warren's three-step drill. Great. It's going to be a three-step drill with a line to walk, so that the bowler who has a tendency to get that pivot step out to the right is going to get that in line, because there will be a visual clue to keep it in line.
So a right-handed player that's having an issue with their pivot step getting in, possibly in the way their swing may be coming down at the release point. So there's going to be a definite place where we can see a liability, and then hopefully we'll be able to correct it with our two players, with Bobby and Mike, right?
Right, and by using a three-step drill, we're going to isolate the motion so that they don't have to think about how they're getting the swing started. They just think about getting that step, getting through the pivot, and making a good shot.
Great, let's go see if we can clean up that middle of the approach right before we get to the finish position and see how it works.
All right. So in this drill, it's a little bit different. It's similar to Coach Warren's 2 tape markings to get the length of the first step of those last 3, so that it's a little bit longer, so we've got some time for the ball to get into the backswing and get a little bit more arc. Now with both Bobby and Mike, we saw that they had some difficulty with it. They weren't always able to get that long enough third step, but it's a development process, and just showing that eventually they get into that. Now with Mike in particular, and to some extent with Bobby, that pivot step had tended to go to the right, and by using the piece of tape along a board that you don't want them to get right of, we were able to keep that pivot step in line. So even though the tape markings for length, we didn't get exactly the result we wanted, over time as they do that drill, they'll start to get that third step a little bit longer, that first step of the last 3 a little bit longer, and eventually they'll go long, short slide, and we'll get that pivot step in line where we want it.
Okay, Coach Mike, we've had a chance to see some players go through the 3-step drill that you've got, working on the pivot step specifically and trying to get them into just a better position going into their finish. What did you see?
Well, first of all, as we know, a 3-step drill is not the easiest drill to do. Right. So you got to get the ball started and get it to fall before you start to take that first step. Right. So sometimes that just takes players a little while to get through. But by doing an isolation and doing this 3-step drill, we got the length of the step where we wanted it, but most importantly for both players have a little bit of trouble with the pivot step. Right. So getting that pivot step where we want it is really the key point of this, and that's where we have the vertical piece of tape.
Getting that foot out of the way so that the swing makes a clear path makes a path for the swing coming through, giving them the continued acceleration of their downswing, give them plenty of different positive aspects when it comes to their finish position.
Exactly, and especially with Mike, you saw that his lines were better. He was able to hit his target more, a little more ball speed, a little more rotation on the ball, and it looked really good.
All of those are great attributes when it comes to a finish position, whether you're out of position to start with and you need something to get back in line, or you're just trying to clean up and get some ball speed where there may be some liabilities. This 3-step drill that you've got here is a great tool to help players get out of their way, get the swing to the bottom, and ultimately increase a lot more than just getting the swing out of the way, increase a lot more possible things in their approach and give them a cleaner finish position.
Exactly.
All right, Coach Mike, we're going to take a look at a 1-step drill in particular that you've used in lessons, and we're going to actually demonstrate it with a player here. Tell us a little bit about what it is and what we're going to get out of it.
Well, a lot of times, a lot of players, as they come along, they tend to use too much upper body in their swing. And so I've got a couple of variations of a 1-step drill, and we've seen 1-step drills in the past. I've got a couple little variations here that will help really reinforce to a player that the lower body drives the swing, and the upper body really just comes along for the ride, if you will.
Great. So I think we have an example of a player that's really upper body dominant to start. You've actually worked with them, and we'll see the examples of what it looks like to have a 1-step drill incorporate the lower body more in the swing, like you're saying, than the upper body.
We're going to see John and what he looks like and how he uses his upper body, and we're going to go through the drills and we're going to see the results.
So let's take a look at it before and after.
All right. Okay, so here we see John in the first example, and John tends to get a little forward, use a lot of upper body, and that causes him to pull a lot of shots and get a lot of shots offline in the front part of the swing. So now we're going to go through a couple of drills and see how that changes the swing. In this first drill, I have John hang the ball to his side. He's going to just gently, very gently bump the ball forward, let the ball fall back on its own weight from gravity, and then as the ball stops going back, he's going to go into a slide, and I'm emphasizing very strongly to John, all lower body. There's absolutely no upper body in this swing, and you can see it really changes how his swing looks from the start. Because we're so focused on the lower body, we're just going to let the ball literally drop down to his side, no effort to create any backswing, just however far it goes back. And then again, heavy emphasis on all lower body, no upper body muscle whatsoever. And you can see he's starting to get a feel for it now. So now we go to full approaches, and we can see a dramatic difference in his swing. There's a lot more freedom in his swing. Gravity's feeding the swing. His lower body is moving a little faster. It's driving ball speed, and you can see at the top of his swing, his elbow still bends, which is really not a bad thing, but he's more relaxed coming down. It unloads a lot better, and he feeds the ball into the lane in a much more repeatable way, and we saw a lot fewer pulled shots at the end.
Okay, Coach, so the one-step drill, we've seen the example of what John looks like. If we take a look at the start to finish on it, the biggest piece we're going to get out of it, like we talked about, I think is the lower body getting engaged more in the swing. Exactly. Take us a little bit through how it worked with John.
So by doing this kind of hanging the ball at your side variation of the one-step drill and really enforcing the idea that there is no upper body in the swing, all you do is nudge the ball forward, let it fall back, and then just go into your slide and get that feeling of no upper body whatsoever in the swing, going to a conventional one-step rather than trying to even push the ball out, just let it fall and let it fall into the swing and again stay with all lower body. The effect of doing that drill over and over again, when you finally get to a full swing, it's dramatic, and we saw a dramatic difference in his swing.
Big difference in somebody using the upper body versus the lower body. And I think a lot of times we try and teach somebody to use their legs more in their swing. You almost drive the tempo, and I think the overall balance and overall force of the ball getting on in the lane can be driven by the lower body better than the upper body.
Exactly, because muscles never fire the same way, and gravity always wins, as we know. And allowing gravity to drive the swing in terms of the ball swing and using the legs to create speed creates more accurate, repeatable shots. And we saw with John that there were instances where he kind of pulled the shot left, and in the end we saw a lot more accuracy.
Yeah, so there it is, the one-step drill from Coach Mike. It's definitely going to give players the opportunity to learn to engage the lower body, get stronger with the footwork, and ultimately balance out that game and not necessarily use the upper body to control the swing. So thanks for the tip, we appreciate it. Hopefully they can use this at home. Mike, the physical game is really important, and there's plenty of places throughout it where we can pay attention to somebody's swing and or their footwork. And one area that you've got a great drill for is right before the finish position, getting the trail leg out of the way. What are we going to see here?
Yeah, we're going to see a variation of Pat Costello's wall drill with a little bit more step into it, and we're going to use that before and after, and we're going to help the player learn to clear their trail leg a little bit more. And we're going to specifically talk about seniors and what they do with that.
Excellent. So maybe a limited range of motion when it comes to flexibility in the joints as we start to age. So getting the trail leg out of the way and getting the arm swing to coming through is really going to make a difference in somebody's ball speed, accuracy overall. It's going to help out, right?
Yeah, because it's one of the most common things that you see a lot of players, not just seniors, but a lot of players as they're learning the game or as they lose a little bit of flexibility with age, they start to have trouble getting that trail leg out of the way, and they start having to take the ball around their body.
Let's learn how to clear the trail leg out of the way for those players that could use a little bit of help.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, with Aggie, we saw that she was having a little bit of trouble getting that trail leg all the way over. And then we did the wall drill, and after we do the wall drill, now we're going to see that she's getting that trail leg over a lot more. What did you see, Stephen, with Aggie and afterwards?
The wall drill did a good job of helping her maintain her balance with that trail leg that comes across. So afterward, she's able to find out where her body needs to maintain balance as she's getting the trail leg out of the way, and that's a big help in the wall drill.
Yeah, we saw a little more ball speed, a little more accuracy.
Absolutely. Two pieces that are easily going to increase the impact of the ball onto the pins and going to increase the scores for our game.
Okay, and so with Bobby particularly has a little bit of trouble getting that trail leg over, a little bit less flexibility. And for him, just getting that trail leg over a little bit. So we saw as we did the wall drill, he got more and more comfortable getting that trail leg over and really kicking that wall as he was taking that slide and getting to a point where he could get his right knee behind his left knee so his leg wasn't out in the path of the ball. So with Dave's got a little more flexibility, but he's taller and has a little bit more trouble getting that knee bend. So with Dave, we're not emphasizing the knee bend nearly as much. We're really emphasizing just getting into that position and getting the trail leg over and allowing the shoulders to come down a little bit so that they stay perpendicular to that ankle.
So Mike, as we can see from this particular drill, it's not something where somebody has to maintain balance the entire time. We just want to get the leg out of the way right and clear space for that swing.
Exactly, and if you can see the right knee for a right-hander get behind the left knee, we've cleared out enough space to keep the ball a little closer to their body so that their swing path is straight, so they'll be a little more accurate, have a little more ball speed, and just be able to shoot a little more scores.
Just enjoy the game a little bit more. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to always maintain balance, meaning you don't have to post every shot exactly the same way, but if the balance does come out to the side a little bit, that's okay in some of our players that can't quite balance on one slide foot.
Exactly, because as we age, we're not going to have quite as much flexibility, we're not going to have quite as much knee bend, and we're not necessarily going to be able to hold that finish position.
So there it is, a great way, regardless of whether you're able to get really low or not, to keep with a finish position that's going to give you repeatability, accuracy, and some ball speed. So take that to your center, take it to your practice routines, and see how it helps your scores.